Okay, good morning everybody. So today we are going to go over the process of making a pattern and duplicating a World War I propeller. So what you see here is a broken one that I'm supposed to be duplicating. The brown one is a Fox propeller actually that I'm doing a repair on, but it's the same shape and profile, and then the pattern that I'm making. So I can't make this pattern exactly like the two you see here because the chord of their blade is much wider than what I'm capable of producing. So I made this pattern to the best of my abilities of what I could do with what my machine can accomplish. So it's still going to work great on the airplane. It's just not going to be completely perfect compared to the replicas. So here I've made my pattern, and what I did is I took a pattern that I already had, made a duplicate of it, and then I just added some Bondo to the pattern to make it as identical to the other two as I could. So I'm kind of smoothing out, doing all the last details to it, smoothing up the airfoil so that it traces well in the lathe. So in order to make this one fit in my lathe, I have to take these little pads out under here because I'm going to use the maximum amount of space that I have in those jaws. So the propeller hub thickness, and hub thickness is what I call the thickness between your drive flange and your crush plate. So you're looking at, it's 6 inches, like 6 inches exactly. So I have to take those out to make that fit. And the machine is actually pretty easy to set up and break down and change things on. It's a pretty simple machine. Grandpa always said one of the hardest things to do is make something simple. And he did that for me with this machine. He didn't know he was doing it for me, really, when he did it when he was making them when we first got the machine, but it's ended up benefiting me greatly. So here I am putting the pattern into the lathe, and it's also the maximum length that I can fit in the lathe as well. So the goal is to get 103 inches, but the 103 inches is from the center of that pilot hole to actually the center of that bolt hole. Like I have to, and they offset that. That's why it's like that, so I can go all the way to the tip. Now, I don't think I made it on this one. I think like 103 is if everything goes exactly perfect, and I don't think I made that. I think I made like 102 inches on this prop. So I got my pattern stuck in there, and then I had to trim the hub. So I always make my patterns a lot bigger than what's needed because I can always go back and trim material off. I mean, everybody knows that you can trim it off, you can't put it back on. So I had to trim some on the bandsaw, and it was a challenge because that is a really heavy block. It probably weighs about 90 pounds, that blank. And I think my saw blade was dulled too, so I really didn't help myself out any there. I should have changed my saw blade before I cut this. But at the same time, I knew there was a good chance I was going to bend and warple that saw blade. So I was kind of like, well, maybe I'll just leave it, because if I kill off a broken or a dull bandsaw blade, that's not a big loss. So anyway, I got that cut off exactly to the 8 inches there, which an 8-inch wide is all that can fit horizontally in those blades, or in those jaws. So those jaws it's a 6x8 opening. And so then I can't put it in like I normally put them in because it goes in at an angle. And like I said, I'm using maximum capabilities of this lathe. So I went in and had to put it in this way directly in parallel here. And when I went to do that, you can see here in a minute, I had to get the jaws, of course, perfectly level. So I rotate it until I get the jaws perfectly level so that I can slide it in. And Then it was really heavy, so then I'm like, man, I should probably have, everyone tells me, oh, you need to get something. So I got to help you lift it or to hold it. So then I put it on this, and then it falls over, and it was just a complete disaster, which is why I generally don't use those kinds of things, because extra tools just generally means extra disasters for me. Extra gadgets mean extra problems. So I got a stool that couldn't collapse on me that was about the right height, but when I went to put it in, I realized it was too thick. So the glue, even though I had planed my boards to make them the right thickness, the glue in between each layer kind of made it just a little bit too thick. So I planed it down, and then I took it back and used my stool. And those stools were Grandpa's stools. So he loved those stools because they said they were the exact height of his butt. So he could always just lean on them. And so I would always run around the shop. We had 2 of them. So I just run around the shop putting those stools underneath him to give his knees a rest. Okay, so I got on all my safety gear, my headphones, my dust mask, and I love that thing. It's called a cut saw, and it just grinds stuff so quickly. It's my one of my favorite tools. I don't know, like before this, I tried to do all that stuff on the bandsaw, and it was a back and forth thing. But with that little cut saw wheel, it's a lifesaver. So basically, I put it in a little bit. I check and see wherever it is touching. And then I go back and grind wherever I mark. So I just did that for forever. And I was getting really down. I was like, man, this is taking forever. This is so hard. And then I follow Joel Osteen on Instagram, and while I was taking a little break and scrolling through my phone, that popped up, and it was just exactly what I needed to hear at exactly the right time. And the funny thing was, I went through and I scrolled through all of his Instagram, and not one single post had any construction background, and that post did. So I like little things like that. It's like, oh my gosh, that had, the construction things on that post, and it's the only one like that I could find. And you just kind of think, man, that was exactly what I needed to hear when I needed to hear it. And I just love those things so much. So I had to include it in here for you guys. But anyway, I got it all ground down, and I'm just really, basically the whole thing was just a complete struggle bus, but I got it done. And there's probably easier ways to do it. I'm sure you guys will tell me in the comments, but that's what I could do to get it done. And I did get it done, and that was great. Abby stayed with me the whole time because she's a rock star like that. But anyway, there we go. We got it in. This is going to be a 3-4 part series, and I will get the rest of them recorded for you guys. And thanks for watching and hanging in there with me.